Hi everybody, James Elson from Centurion Running here. Today's video is all about kit, footwear and apparel for Centurion running events. Now, mandatory kit lists are part of the sport. They have been for a long time. So the things we're going to focus on today are the mandatory kit lists for our events. Then we're going to look at the things that we really recommend you should carry. They're not on the mandatory kit list, but to be honest, you really should be carrying them. And if you're not, you really ought to think carefully, have I got a good reason for not having those things on me? They're really going to improve your enjoyment of the sport. And also the things that are kind of nice to have on top. Now, the ultra running landscape's a broad one. We've got everything from 50k trail or 50k road even to the spine race or Tour de Géant or multi-day stage races. Yeah, it's a huge spectrum of different types of event. Underfoot conditions change, environments change, the weather in particular changes. So as we always say with these kit videos, it's not one size fits all. Absolutely everybody has their own unique set of conditions and parameters, things that work for them, things that don't. Faithful kit that's been going for 20 years and works brilliantly, and brand new stuff that's just come out off the shelf and has revolutionized their running. There's no right or wrong here. We're really here just to provide good, solid advice. And to that point, really the event part of what we do came first. 50k, 50 mile, 100 mile trail races, but also obviously things like the piece of string fun run, which no doubt we'll see again one day, the track 100 and many other things beside. The key for us really with our shop where I am today is ranging the most appropriate items, the best of the best from the key brands in the sport, and handpicking those things and bringing a selection to our runners and beyond that we can personally recommend a test to. These are the things we use ourselves here. My position at Centurion, I founded Centurion in 2010. Obviously, I myself have been a runner for the best part of 2 decades now and interested most specifically in the 50k, 50 mile, 100 mile trail races. So a lot of what you see today is born out of my experience as an athlete, but most importantly, it's also born out of our experience as organisers. And one thing with these kit lists is that a lot of people sort of question why something might be needed. So I'm going to explain the different parameters there and why you should think about carrying certain items or why you must carry certain items. But just remember that the weather can change during the event. Things can happen that are out of your control. And the kit lists aren't necessarily just there for you, they're also there for other competitors. Trail racing by its very nature means being out, self-sufficient between checkpoints. You need to think about keeping yourself safe, but you also need to think about the other competitors in the race. What happens if you come across somebody who's had an issue or an accident? You might be the first person on the scene. So there's a little bit of safety for others built into it as well. That's a really important part of trail racing. So I'm going to talk you through the mandatory kit, then the things that you might think about carrying in addition, and then the things that are nice to have on top. So focusing on the kit for our 100 mile events, we've got similar videos out there for 50k and 50 mile already. And the difference with 100 milers is really thinking about the duration of the event and that you're almost guaranteed to be going through the night. Now, that is a almost unique situation for many runners. We see a lot of people posting questions about some of the mandatory kit and things we recommend carrying. They think it might be a bit over the top, particularly as most of our events are in pretty clement weather months. Thames Path, May, South Downs Way, June, Wendover Woods in July, and then North Downs, August, autumn, October. So 5 in a year for us most years. That might be the case, but we've had temperatures below freezing at the Thames Path. We've had very, very heavy rain at the Autumn 100 on storm level winds, named storm level winds. It's not always bright sunshine, blue skies. So we're going to cover all bases here, from it's a nice bright sunny day or it's super hot, what do I need, through to, you know, I'm walking. I've been out on the trail for 28 hours and I'm walking very slowly to the finish. That is not a situation that runners find themselves in very often. How many of us have been at hour 28 of a race more than, you know, a very, very small number of times, possibly for the first time? What do I actually need? And we know that better than you do, honestly, because we've seen it thousands of times. You may have seen it only a few or be completely new to it yourself. So trust us when we say this is the kit that we we recommend you think about using. As I have done with the other distances, I'm going to start with what I would use to start the race in, footwear and just basic clothing. None of this is mandatory kit, of course, but it's essential for your race. And crucially, I'm going to use this stuff as often as I can in training. I'm then going to use the kit, the nutrition that I'm going to carry in the race, certainly for all my long runs. As I get closer to race day, going to be more specific with my training. So my longer runs are going to become more and more important. And I'm going to get much more specific with what I'm training with. So I want to be totally sure on race day that my bag is packed with everything that I need in the right order, in the right places. Yeah, I've got all the quantities of things correct. I know where things are if I need to get them, but also that it fits and doesn't rub and feels good. You know, not showing up to race day with a fully loaded pack for the first time and it feeling heavy, and then that sort of doubt, seed of doubt is planted right from the start. So for me, everything begins with a good pair of trail shoes. Our courses obviously are a mix of underfoot conditions, but they pretty much all contain some pavement, some tarmac, some hard packed trail, and then some soft and muddy trails at times. So something like the Sportiva Acacia 2 is a shoe I just routinely recommend to our runners. You've got great grip, so it's grippy on wetter stuff, but it's not too grippy to be really useful on road and harder packed trail. Really good cushioning, as I say, road, harder packed trail tends to feature. A good breathable toe box and a good amount of protection in the upper foot as well. So just a superb all-rounder. Whatever your go-to trail shoe is, use it as often as you can in training so that you trust and believe in that shoe. For me, I always have on a pair of shorts. These are the Sportiva Ultra Distance Short. They've got a nice waistband where you can tuck at least half a dozen gels in the phone quite easily. Then I'll have a t-shirt on. This is just one of our Centurion Ultra Team tech tees. Pair of arm warmers to go with them, and then a decent pair of trail socks. Now the t-shirt arm warmer combination gives you flexibility. So if it's cold at the start, but then it warms up, and sometimes at our events it gets very hot, I'm not going to overheat that badly using that stuff. The arm sleeves come off and roll down and can just be stored around my wrist quite easily. If it's the Thames Path or the Autumn 100 and it's cold from the start, I might be starting in one single thicker base layer. And that's an obvious personal decision that you need to make based on the conditions as you come into race day. The next big question we always get asked with regards to kit for our events, and it's not on the mandatory kit list, is how big of a race vest or waist belt do I need to carry for the event in question? Now, you'll see at the Thames Path runners and the 2022 men's Thames Path champion Tristan Stevenson used just a waist belt. Tristan's carrying the absolute bare minimum of kit, all meets mandatory kit check, that's fine, but he's got nothing extra. And if you're at the very sharp end, anticipating and finishing in the daylight, and you're that one or two people, great, that's fine. The majority of runners are out there all night and well into the second day. So you need something that's going to keep all of the kit, the mandatory kit, but a few extra things on top. And this is where in 100 milers, we often describe them as 3 times 50 mile races or equivalent of 350s. And the reason is it's double the distance, but the going through the night and into the next morning thing means temperature change, body regulation in terms of thermoregulation, your body temperature change. The slowing down is often more pronounced. It can often be a lot more walking in the second half. Issues get that much more of a time to sort of germinate and then become slightly more pronounced. So plan for a long day and night and second day, and be pleasantly surprised when things go well, but be prepared for all outcomes. So for a race vest, this UD Ultra vest, which is a 10-litre vest, is absolutely adequate for one of our 100-mile races. Now, I would recommend for runners at the sharper end, 5 litres and upwards, through to around 12, even 15 litres for someone towards the back end of the pack. Somewhere in that range is about right. This is such an individual thing. If you're a larger runner, you've got more kit, bigger kit, you know, that takes up more space in the bag. So just think about that sort of thing. But this Ultra Vest, and they make a women's specific version of the Ultra Vest, is everything I need and more for one of our 100s. So I've got 2 stuff pockets in the front for nutrition. They're really expansive. It comes with 2 soft flasks that sit really nicely on your chest. The 500ml soft flasks give you the 1 litre water capacity to meet mandatory gear. There's another couple of little natty pockets in the front for extra bits and pieces. But if I turn it round to the back, I've got this really great stuff pocket here. That's where my waterproof jacket's going to go, because if I need it in a hurry, it's straight off over the bag. And then it's got big deep stuff pockets in the back, so I can get my mandatory gear in a dry bag, crucially, straight in there, dropped in, and I'm good to go. There's also plenty of space in there for additional bits and pieces if I want to carry extras. I'll come on to that in a second. And extra pockets in the back as well for other bits and pieces on top of that. So just a great all-rounder, 10 litre vest, does everything I need and more. However, particularly in hundreds where I'm carrying extra kit to be safer during the night, for example, or if the weather's bad, a waist belt can be super handy. This is a naked band. It weighs nothing. It sits just above my hips, kind of out of sight. I can get loads of nutrition in there, plus other bits and pieces. That helps distribute the weight more evenly across my body. So if the pack's starting to feel a bit heavy, then I've got some weight in there as well, around my waist, sits really nicely. It's also got some handy pole loops. So whilst there are pole loops in the pack, and I'll have them in my hands on and off for some of our events, for some runners, this also gives you some versatility, and you can tuck the poles away quite nicely there as well. Poles are absolutely not mandatory gear for our events. Totally personal preference. If you're someone who likes using them and is efficient and has good technique, great, come on down. If you're not, you practice with them in training if you're interested, but otherwise no need to have them on you. The next big area really is the waterproof, and again, reiterating other videos where I discuss waterproofs in more detail, you'll see some terminology on our kit lists that really needs a bit of explanation. We say 10,000ml hydrostatic head, minimum waterproof rating, and then sealed or taped seams. What does that mean? Well, 10,000ml hydrostatic head is the waterproof rating of the material that the jacket is made out of. You'll find that on everything from tents through to whatever other waterproof items you can buy. Taped or sealed seams simply mean that the stitched areas are covered over with a tape on the inside to prevent them from leaking. This is the Montane Minimus Light. It's the brand new Montane jacket for lightweight waterproof jacket for spring summer 23. Comes in a men's and a women's version. Both weigh approximately 200 grams. You don't even notice, to be honest, it's that light. You've got an adjustable hood on both. You've got 2 front pockets, which are super handy, and then an adjustable hem as well. Now, that jacket packs down so small, weighs next to nothing. It's got a really nice bit of stretch in the material, and to be honest, is everything you'll ever want from a lightweight waterproof jacket. To improve on that is next to impossible. Now, for a 100-miler, if it's raining on and off, or it's not freezing cold, this jacket will absolutely do everything you need and more. So have a good base layer, a wicking base layer, and a decent waterproof jacket like that, and you should be good to go. Now, the other piece of clothing on the mandatory kit list that I wouldn't class as an accessory is just a spare base layer that has to be unworn or in a dry bag. This is the Montane Dark Light. Look how small it packs down, and you can get that in a dry bag, and then it's away in your pack and is for use only in an emergency. So if you've stopped out on the trail or you stopped at a checkpoint and you're awaiting a lift to stop you getting cold, in the dry bag it goes. That mustn't be worn during the race, okay? So if you think you might want an additional base or mid layer that you wear during the race or could be useful, carry that plus another one. Again, any long sleeve base layer or mid layer top will pass kit check in terms of an emergency backup layer. Hats and gloves, they're not on the list for every race. South Downs Way 100, for example, doesn't have these because it's in June. Thames Path and Autumn do. The hat, I would always recommend like a lightweight beanie that covers your whole head. Really useful, weighs next to nothing. That's a Montane stretch beanie. And a buff. You can have either or. A buff will pass, or versatile head and neck wear will pass kit check for your hat, but I would always carry a couple of spare buffs and then a nice warm hat too, and a decent pair of gloves. For me, this Sportiva Trail glove is ideal because I've got a really nice warm glove with a superb windproof over mitt that tucks away into the cuff of the glove. Covers all my bases, really warm set of gloves. But here's where I deviate away from mandatory kit to you should strongly consider carrying, particularly if the weather is bad. So one thing, and I've said this for the 50k and 50 mile videos as well, this windproof from Sportiva is a blizzard jacket, and they do a Breezer women's equivalent, is a windproof that weighs 100 grams. And to me is the absolutely, like, the kit that I use the most out of everything you've just seen. I'll only use a waterproof jacket if it's actually raining. If it's not, I'll always use the windproof. It's so versatile, comes on and off. It's stretchy, so it zips over almost anything. And you know, I can tuck that into my waistband or back in the pack or in the side of my shorts without even noticing. It's then another insulating layer if I get cold out on the trail. So really, really great piece of kit. And in terms of other waterproof options, if you're going to be walking a lot of the race, because you realise that a run-walk combination is best for you, or things go wrong, or you're just planning to walk a lot of the race, whatever the case may be, and it's a wet and windy one, you are going to need additional waterproof protection. So a pair of waterproof gloves, not mandatory kit, but is for races like UTMB and Lakeland and whatever else, because those are more serious in terms of the conditions they can present to you. The Monte Minimus waterproof mitt goes over your other glove, keeps them dry, and it's just, again, weighs nothing and gives you such additional extra protection. You might consider switching to a tight or having a spare pair of tights instead of your shorts, again, weather dependent, particularly if it's cold overnight, something like the Thames Path, the Autumn 100. And then a waterproof trouser. This is the La Sportiva Drizzle pant, weighs under 200 grams, packs down to nothing. You know, if you've got those things on you, you're talking about half a kilo of additional weight max for total kind of protection against all the elements. So strongly consider the weather against what you might actually need versus what's just the basic stuff that's on the mandatory kit list. That really is the bare minimum. So headlamps are a big consideration for 100 milers, obviously. The majority of runners will be out there for a full night. When I say headlamps, obviously chest lamps and waist lamps are available too, or even a handheld flashlight. Any of those things work. Minimum of 100 lumens for the primary lamp or 50 for the backup. But if you've got a lamp that's under 100 lumens, you really need to think how efficient and effective it's going to be for you out on the trail. We stock Petzl. They are the best by far in the market. They always have been. And there's 3 Petzl lamps that we'd probably recommend as the ideal options for our event. So kind of 3 different tiers here. The Petzl Now RL is the top of the line lamp. It's super bright LED. There's a red flashing LED as well that's mounted into the battery, the rechargeable battery. It's got really nice balance, weighs 200 grams. So it looks heavy, but it's really not, and packs down small. But in terms of giving me maximum output for longest possible amount of time, this is the lamp. And I've had 20 hours on the low reactive setting, which would be easily enough for any of our events. 20 hours I've had out of 1 battery charge on that. As with all of these things, make sure it works for you. Make sure you try it in training. Leave it on for that long. Make sure it's still working. Don't just take my word for it. Check it out for yourself. The Swift RL is really the go-to all-rounder. It's under 100 pounds, packs down even smaller than the Now RL. So I really like that because you can easily stuff it in a side pocket of a race vest. Really comfortable headband, 3 reactive and constant lighting settings, and easy, really small to pack spare battery that will obviously then, that combination of spare battery plus Swift RL will get you through any night at one of our events. And then for a backup, this Petzl Takina, it has 3 constant lighting settings, runs off 3 AAA batteries, 250 lumens, and costs under 20 quid. So that as your backup is absolutely the way to go. So that's your headlamps, and that covers you off from a lighting point of view. Practice with them in training. You'd be amazed at how many 100-mile runners we see at our events who just haven't worked out how to run at night or what headlamp brightness to be running with. You know, just make sure you work out those things in training. On to navigation. You've got a marked course ahead of you for all of our 100 milers. That means we provide arrows and confidence tape at every junction. And ideally, you shouldn't ever have to rely on any external navigation device. Needless to say, markings can be tampered with or removed, or there can be issues out on the trail. So make sure you've got a backup. One of several things. I would have all of these. First is a decent GPS watch with the GPX that is available from every one of the race pages that we have. This is a Coros Vertix, so they're top of the line watch. It's got extremely long battery life. Would go for any one of our 100 milers on full navigation, no problem. However, they also do watches that range down to the Pace 2 for under £200 that do great navigation as well. I would always have my mobile phone as a backup. The phone is part of mandatory kit, but I would have the OS app on that, and I would have the maps for the event that I'm entered into downloaded with the GPX, and then you can basically sight yourself on course wherever you are. If you've come off course, drop the app, open it, it'll tell you exactly where you are and help you navigate back to the trail should you have come off it at any time. And then also map and compass. Harveys do super lightweight 1 to 40,000 maps that cover the national trails, weigh next to nothing, and just that backup if the technology fails. Again, you shouldn't need to rely on any of those things, but having them will make a tremendous difference to your confidence and your ability to get back on course if you do manage to come off. Other bits and pieces to talk about. Cups always a thing. Obviously, we did away with throwing away thousands of plastic cups years ago. This is a Centurion Running silicone cup. Stick it in the front of your race vest. This is in addition to those soft flasks, because you might want a Coke or a squash, even if you say, oh, I'll just use my soft flask. At some point or the other, you've probably got your water in there and you probably need to use a cup. We mandate you carry one. They're only a £5, get yourself one, great bit of kit. If you want hot drinks, and this is particularly prevalent in 100-mile races, loads of people resort to hot drinks in the second half of the race in particular. It's cold overnight. Get yourself a cup of tea or coffee. Any of the checkpoints in the second half will have hot drinks. This Life Systems Ellipse mug folds out of itself. Crucially, it won't burn your hand or the volunteer's hand when you get a hot drink put inside of it. Folds down to a very small size. Hot drinks will burn your hand through these. So these are no good if you want tea or coffee, unless you like it cold. A mini first aid kit. This isn't on the kit list, but clearly it's always worth carrying something so you can be a bit more self-sufficient if you do suffer a minor injury out on the trail. This Life Systems Nano first aid kit weighs next to nothing, covers the bases off. A lot of the race vest and pack options on the market come with whistles these days. That's fine, they'll pass kit check. If not, this Life Systems safety whistle, under £4, nice and loud, covers you off. And then the survival blanket. Now, again, under £2, a lot of race vests come with them. These are for emergency use, clearly. Really, the best way to use them is to have them over your base layer but under your outer shell. Give you a huge amount of additional insulation. The other way to use them is by putting them on the ground. Will insulate you from some of the cold coming up through the floor. But if we're honest and we're trying to get more people to consider this option, this Life Systems thermal bag is essentially a survival bag that you can climb into, made out of the same material but that you can get fully inside. Far more useful and effective in an emergency situation than just the blanket. On to the last thing, really. Well, let's go before the last thing. Little sticker body glide. Chafing, particularly in hundreds, which go on for obviously far longer than our 50Ks and 50 milers, becomes a massive problem. Don't ruin your enjoyment of the race for such a simple, easy to avoid issue. Little sticker body glide in your race vest. It'd be the first thing for me that goes in that pack. And then on to nutrition, really. You'll find a good list on the website of the things we carry at our checkpoints, but to recap, we offer fully stocked aid stations. That means when you come in, you'll find volunteers on hand to help you with fluid, typically water, Coke, squash, and then Tailwind. Come to that in a second. And then from a food perspective, you'll find everything from gluten-free, vegan, vegetarian options all the way through, sandwiches, wraps, sweet and savoury snacks, so on and so forth. And as I say, hot drinks at some of the later aid stations. Sports nutrition-wise, you'll find Tailwind on tap. You can use it to fill your soft flasks, and you'll find Goo energy gels, usually in a variety of flavours. Don't rely exclusively on the aid station supplies. We try to guarantee everything is available to every runner from front to back. Inevitably, it's not always possible. if we happen to run out of something and it's the one thing you think you need, make sure you're carrying some of it on you, just so that you're not disappointed. Perfect example, we serve majority orange flavour Tailwind. If for some unknown reason we manage to run out for you, it's highly, highly unlikely, but not impossible, have a few stick packs of it on you. Make sure you're carrying something so that you can be self-sufficient in case of an emergency. Bunch of gels. I would be starting the race with a little bit of hydration, some gels, some sports nutrition, and a few other savoury snacks that keep me going through the race. And then crucially also some electrolytes. I use Succeed S caps to keep my sodium content going in throughout the whole race. So that's it really. As I say, we've got 3 tiers. We've got the mandatory kit, that's the bare minimum, the things you really ought to think about carrying as pretty much essential, and then the nice to haves on the top. But crucially, once again, pack your bag for you. Train with the nutrition and the kit and the footwear en route to race day, and make sure you step on that start line feeling 100% confident in your setup. So now let's talk about how to pack all this mandatory kit into your race vest or pack. I made some videos nearly 10 years ago now. There were some of the first on how to pack your race vest, and honestly nothing's changed. It's just evolution of that kit into things that are slightly smaller, slightly more versatile, slightly better performing. But nevertheless, it's useful just to recap in one place and take you through how to do it today. It's extremely simple. So first things first, I'm going to take my race vest and I'm going to make sure that I know where things are going so that they're accessible to the points that I'm going to need them. So in the front, everything I'm definitely going to need to use. In the back, in the bottom of the back, the mandatory kit that's for use in an emergency only. And then on top of that, stuff that I might use or that I will use but only at a certain point further down the race. Easy place to start is with the hydration. So most race vests will have 2 500ml soft flasks that probably come with it and will sit nicely in the front. The best thing about this, or not the best thing, but a really good thing about this UD Ultra Vest or Vesta is these toggles in the front. They prevent the flasks from slipping down as they empty. So as you drink out of the soft flask, they begin to shrink down into the pockets, and that can be quite irritating. So those toggles is really, really handy. The other thing to bear in mind here is flasks over bladders every time if you can, because you can see and feel exactly how much fluid you've got left rather than guessing if it's in the bag. Now, if it's a very hot day and it's a long way between checkpoints, I would definitely have a third soft flask loaded, like full of water in the back as a backup, as an emergency. You'll see in a minute how much extra space there is in this vest to do that. The other thing to think about putting in the front clearly is spare nutrition. So for me, be a bunch of gels, yeah, possibly a few bits of savoury food as well, but for ease of packing today, it's going to stick half a dozen gels in the front pocket. I'm going to stick a few sticks of Tailwind. There's 6 servings of Tailwind there. The other front pocket. As you put this on, these pockets will cinch tight around you because it tightens up and the pockets sit flat against your body. So none of this stuff is going to go anywhere. It's not going to bounce out. I'm also going to have my soft cup in the front because clearly I'm going to need that at the checkpoints, so I want it easily accessible. There's also a really natty pocket just here underneath the soft flask on the right, on the left-hand side even. I'm going to put my body glide in there. I'm also going to put my phone in the front just in case I need it for navigation or for an emergency call. And therefore really in the front of that race vest is everything I'm going to definitely need to access during the race. So if I flip this over, there's a stuff pocket here which is really, really handy for my waterproof jacket. So I've got my Monte Minimus light jacket here. Compresses down to nothing and it's stuffed down the middle of there, and again it's the same setup on the Ultra Vesta. I've now got that access to that jacket really easily. I can pull it out without even taking the vest off. Now quite a few people have asked me over the years, in the original vest video I made, I packed the bag and then put the waterproof over the top of everything. Some waterproof jackets like this have got some stretch material in it. The Bonatti Trail jacket from Salomon has actually got a expansive area built into the back, so you can, it's deliberately designed so you can put it over the whole system. Just bear in mind that it possibly means you buying a jacket that's slightly too big for you to get over the whole race vest. That's not a problem. Just stick it on underneath. Yes, it's not quite as versatile, but for me to put that jacket on and put the race vest back over the top, is a matter of seconds, really, not even a minute. So my vest is in the back, and there are 2 deep stuff pockets in this UD vest. So the next thing I'm going to do is open the main one, the main compartment, and I'm going to get the rest of my gear inside there. But to do that, I'm going to use dry bags. First up, my spare base layer, that's going in the dry bag as part of the race rules. Make sure it's in there, it's not for use, it's emergency use only. I'm also going to put the other things in there that I'm only going to need in an emergency. So instead of a survival blanket, I've got the survival bag, which will not only pass kit check, will get you extra credit with us. My backup headlamp, my spare battery for my primary headlamp, that's not mandatory kit, but I would absolutely recommend carrying. Got my first aid kit. I've got my whistle, and I've got my map and compass. Now, I've packed the first aid kit, which is soft, against the outside of that, so that there are no jagged edges pushing into my back through the dry bag. So you want to try and keep softer items to one side, so the softer items are against your back and not the more jagged, sharper items there, like, for example, a head torch battery or something like that. I've then got a second dry bag. That's a 3 litre. This is a 5 litre. That's all you need. These are Exped dry bags. These are the standard ones, absolutely fantastic. So I've got my second dry bag. The emergency kit is now on the bottom of that. I've got my gloves, and again, I'm thinking about the soft parts against the small in my back here. Gloves in, hat and buff in there again, giving me some protection. My head torch and my hot drinks cup. Some of you will want that in the front because you'll want it from earlier on, but for me, that's a sort of back of the pack. Might use it later, maybe not, depends on how fast I'm feeling. Best thing to do is compress all the air out of these, get them flat as you can, small as you can. You can see I could have got that into a smaller dry bag, but there's no need. The roll top version of these makes them super useful and flexible. So flatten that right out, and then that slips down into the main compartment of the UD vest. I'm not even going to try to pack this well. If you wanted to get a load more stuff in here, you could easily do it. I haven't used any of the side pockets whatsoever. I'm pushing that bag down into the space. There'd be plenty of room in there for a soft flask. In addition, as I said, with another ½ litre of fluid on it. Okay, fixed in the back. I've got a soft portion against my spine. Everything's loaded in the front. Obviously, I haven't got my fluid in there. In training, I would even if I didn't want to drink on a run, because I wasn't out for long enough, I'd still fill these with water. And the reason is you want to get used to having an extra kilo. Think about that, a kilo of weight on the front of this vest. It make it feel very different. These adjustable straps on the front are excellent, bearing in mind it's freezing cold down here. I'm wearing 2 base layers and a hoodie. There's still plenty of room in that for me. These are size small, medium, large, by the way, so you've got good versatility in the size range. These rails move up and down, so these pop out and you can fit them slightly differently if you prefer. But as the flasks fill and empty, you'll find you need to adjust the straps, and you can do that on the run. Everything fits beautifully. Just final thing with the straps across the shoulders, make sure these sections are not cutting into your neck. So to size this right, these straps should sit in the middle of your shoulders, and then sort of in a straight line down the body there. So that's me, ready, set, go. I've got more kit in there than I'd probably need for our races. I've got a few extra bits and pieces. But if I wanted to add tights, waterproof trousers, waterproof gloves, extra nutrition, soft flask, I could easily do that in the back of this 10 litre vest. Hope that helps in terms of how to actually pack your kit.
Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
Yeah, good, thanks.
You've got to drop the leg. Yes. What's your number?
So just to finish up with the prep for 100-mile trail races, our events, we offer drop bag pickup, usually at halfway and again towards the latter end of the race. So example, Thames Path 100, you can pick up your bag at mile 51 at Henley, and again at mile 70 at Goring-on-Thames. Now, they need to be different bags because the bag doesn't travel on. They are going to go to that specific location, and then they'll be taken to the finish for you for collection there. So you need 2 bags, one for 51, one for mile 70, and it's the same with the other events. The only difference being the Autumn 100, you're returning to a central location at the end of each loop, and therefore you can have 1 central bag. So the packing for that's a bit different. We have a restriction on the bag size for the drop bag locations. So we typically can't transport, tons of 100-litre bags around, and quite frankly, you don't need that much kit. So I'm going to use an example today is this kit bricks, which we stock because they're exactly the right size, they're waterproof, and then they zip together really nicely, so they're easily transportable. They are quite expensive, but you get what you pay for. They're superb pieces of kit with this natty Centurion Running branding on the front as well. Anyway, this gives us an indicator of size. So what I'm going to show you is what I'd think about putting in a drop bag, and more importantly, what I would not put in a drop bag, because the thing we see most with drop bags are runners coming in, not finding that one thing they really need because they've crammed it full of everything, and honestly, most of it gets chucked away. So just have a think about, what do I need most? Now, we always get asked, should I change my shoes? And the answer is probably not. If you want to change your shoes because of a dramatic terrain change in the second half of the race or a section following that drop bag point, and that simply isn't the case with our events. That being said, if you've got very muddy, wet shoes and then the weather's going to brighten up, it's going to be less wet in the second half, you might want to get rid of your wet, muddy shoes and change into drier ones. I would say, for me personally, I wouldn't change shoes. For many other runners, it's important to them and honestly something to look forward to. So let's put them in on the basis that there's plenty of space. I'm going to show you how. So here's my spare pair of shoes. They're my Acacia 2s. I've had the same pair on from the start. They fit nicely in the bottom there, and as you can see, they haven't even taken up half the bag. Spare socks. I would absolutely put spare socks in. I just think a fresh pair of socks is going to help. If it's a dry day, my footwear's working well, I'm changing neither of those things. But let's say, for example, socks and shoes are on my list, so they've gone in. Now, I'm packing for a change in conditions during the second half or in the latter third of the race. That is, it's going to get dark, temperatures are going to drop. And in a race like the Thames Path, alongside a body of water, it can get very cold at night. So to proof myself against that, I've got, I've started in shorts or a pair of tights. I've got a fresh, warmer pair of tights in there. I've got myself a spare base layer. That's not the one I'm carrying in my pack, which again, I can't touch until there's an emergency, so hopefully not at all. A spare pair of gloves, in case the others have wet out by that point. You want warmer, dry hands leaving that checkpoint. Spare buff, always useful. I've got my S-cap so I can top up my electrolytes, and then I've got a bag of nutrition. That could look completely different, but I've just got an iteration of what I had from the start, so a bunch of gels and some Tailwind. I've not even filled 3/4 of the bag there, okay? That's then waterproofed. It's labelled with my start number, and it goes to the checkpoint. It's there for me when I arrived, handed by a volunteer. I've got everything I need. As I say, you can chuck more clothing in there. You could put a second waterproof jacket if it's supposed to be really wet from the start, a warmer mid-layer, a fleece layer, or a jacket to wear through the night. Loads more nutrition, and there's plenty of room besides. The kit bricks is the upper end of the size range that we allow for drop bags. So a bit bigger than a shoebox, only just bigger than a shoebox. Crucially, if you are looking for bags for drop bags, don't use cardboard. These things can get wet. They'll get left outside, obviously at the checkpoints on occasion. So don't use something that's going to disintegrate when it's wet. Don't literally use a shoebox. But just make sure it's secure as well, so something that's a bit stronger or firmer. Again, it doesn't need to be a kit bricks, but that gives you an idea of the scale, shape and size that you should be expecting to use for a drop bag. Last thing, your finished bag can be bigger than this. Look at the rules for the race that you're entering, but it's probably going to be a limit of about 50 litres, so plenty of space for anything you need to get changed into at the finish. So that's it with regards to the kit, footwear, apparel you need for our events. Remember, if you are whichever one of our events you're entered into, check the gear list, the mandatory gear list specific to that race. There are subtle differences between each of them, especially with the the colder weather events, or the ones that are likely to have more inclement weather. 100 Hills at the start of the season, South Downsway 50, Thames Path and Autumn 100s. There are a few extra items on there, so check those and make sure you're packing appropriately for the event in question. Remember, there are some things that aren't on the mandatory kit list that are really, really worth considering taking. The mandatory kit is the bare minimum, and essentially they're just to make sure you're safe. Consider what else you might need to actually have the most successful, enjoyable day that you can. And remember that a lot of these things weigh next to nothing and are simple additions to your bag. Finally, just a reminder, use everything we've used today or shown you today in training, and as you get closer to race day, wear all of the gear that you're going to start the race in with your fully loaded race vest. Take your race nutrition, hydration out with you, practice with it, visualize yourself in the event. It will massively help your preparation and your confidence going into it if you have full confidence and belief in the kit and the systems you're using. Any questions as ever, direct to us at store@centurionrunning.com. I myself and the team around me will come straight back to you with personal advice. And if you want to come see us in person, look out for our monthly open days. We launch those every month on the website, and we'll communicate details to you via the newsletters. Come and see us in the shop. We'll talk to you about your needs, go through everything with you here, and make sure that you're confident and comfortable in what you're using. Good luck, and see you at the Centurion event soon.